Hey everyone, Spencer here with Pool Genius, and I'm joined by our lead analyst, Jason Lisk. And Jason, we're here to talk about week one of the NFL season today. That's right, it's finally here. We've been looking at these games, we've been looking at the matchups ever since they were released back in May, and it's finally here. We're actually going to see some NFL football that actually matters on our TV this weekend. So, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, we've had so much time to look at these games. I've got these games memorized as far as the matchups, probably more so than I can. Now I'm forgetting my kids' names because I've devoted too much brain energy to this week one schedule. But yeah, we're almost here.
Yeah. And so in this video, we're going to break down every one of those matchups. We're going to talk about what our models like, what we like from a game winner perspective on each of these matchups, and also from against the spread. That should hopefully help you out if you're playing in NFL pools this season, whether it is a pick 'em pool where you're picking those game winners or you're picking a certain amount against the spread, or even confidence pools. So, speaking of that, what are some general strategies that you have, Jason, when it comes to different NFL pools like that?
Yeah, some of the things you want to think about when you're playing in the pool is a what kind of contest is it, right? Am I playing for the full season? Am I playing to win some money this week? Those are vastly different contests. One requires 272 picks if you're picking every game or something like that, and the other might require 16. And so when you only have 16 games, one or two games may swing what happens. 272, you want to be more slow and steady, make solid picks, and let other people shoot themselves in the foot, particularly in small pools. I want to let people kind of like go crazy on picking the wrong upsets, fall behind. Whereas in a weekly contest, you want to take the one. You want to be the one taking some big swings where you think a pick can win you the pool that week. So that's number one. Confidence pools, where you assign points. You want to think about how you want to do that too. Kind of a similar philosophy. Do I want to be more conservative and just like basically have my points aligned with how I think the teams are most likely to win, or do I want to take some bigger swings on outcomes I think are less popular? You want to do that more with weekly pools than you do with season long. You want to do that with bigger pools more than you want to do with smaller. And then spread pools, look for line value, look for uh, you know, good numbers. Like, are you getting a key number? That could often be little things that'll give you a little edge, and then where the popularity is falling, in case you want to differentiate. And those become bigger factors, I think, in the pick fives too, where you aren't picking from every game.
Yeah, and you mentioned popularity. You mentioned all those strategy principles that go into making smart picks, and that's exactly what our Pool Genius tools are designed to do. So you can go over to Pool Genius and go to Pick'em pools or Football Pick'em. Go to the data grid, which we actually have a free trial going right now for week one, so you can get in there for free. No credit card required. You can just sign up, put in your email, and see all the data where we have what the public is picking for game winner pools, what they're picking for spread pools, and it actually you put in the pool your size, your settings, how many picks you have to make, which games you're picking, and it actually optimizes that for you based off of the public trends, the national data of where everyone else is picking. So it's really cool, and it's really cool to just look at this data and see those big differences. And we're going to spotlight some of those. In fact, let's go into those right now. If we're looking at a game winner pool, what are some of the value plays that stick out where maybe the public is down on a team even though they're favored? I know we have a couple of those highlighted for week one.
Yeah, I mean, one of the cornerstones of building your pick strategy in a week is probably to find favorites where you have the odds to win in your favor, and yet the public is underpicking them relative to their chances. And that's especially the case if the public is actually picking that favorite like they're the dog. That is, more than half the pool is going to be opposite you, and yet you have the better hand, so to speak, in terms of win odds. And so those are like foundational picks. For this one clear one is Green Bay hosting Detroit. Green Bay is the 2.5 point favorite. So it's not like they're a big favorite, but they are the favorite. They're about 55, 56% to win in the market odds and in our models. And yet only about 30% of the public is picking them, which means public's picking Detroit like as if they're like a 3 or 4 point favorite instead of the opposite. And so that's almost a no-brainer. Like if I'm going to get the team who just traded for, Micah Parsons, who was a playoff team last year and is playing at home, and I know they lost to Detroit last year, and that's fresh in people's minds, and Detroit went 15-2. All those things are why Detroit is popular. But to me, this is a no-brainer, whether it's a season-long or a weekly contest, because in a weekly contest, it's great leverage to be on the unpopular favorite.
Yeah, and we'll talk a little bit more about this when we get into the game by game analysis and everything. But it kind of makes sense on the surface too. I mean, Detroit was 15-2 last year. They were the 1 seed in the NFC. So that public perception is that, hey, Detroit is the number 1 team in the NFC or number 2 behind the Eagles. Why are they an underdog? Like, they're better than the Packers. They were better than them last season, and they didn't go through too many changes. Although there is
Yes,
2 important changes that they did go through, even though they didn't rotate the roster. From the player perspective, they have new offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator. So that's a big thing that we're going to be watching for with Detroit is how do they come out of the gate replacing those 2 coordinators. And Ben Johnson, their OC, was one of the best offensive coordinators in the game. So it's not like those are easy shoes to fill. So that's it. It's an interesting divisional matchup, even if you take those factors out of it. But especially with those factors coming in, it's going to be interesting seeing what the Lions are doing.
for sure. And so that's probably number one. That's clearly number one. We don't really have another case in week one of a favorite just being on the complete opposite side of the public. But we do have some close calls and actually some pick'ems and some very low spread games where the public is clearly breaking one way. And so those are games where it's more of a coin toss, right? Maybe you have a read on a team and you want to go with the team you think, but you also want to test your mental, like, am I just following the crowd with how I think, or do I really think this team has a specific advantage in this matchup? One is Buffalo Baltimore in the Sunday night game. Public is breaking heavily toward Buffalo, as you might imagine, because we all have recency bias. Who won the game when they played in January? Buffalo did. It was a close game, right? But Buffalo won. Baltimore actually crushed Buffalo in the regular season last year. That was a huge value play at the time. I remember that. That was one of our big weeks where we actually had our highest weekly win rate. And that was one of the games because the public was heavily on Buffalo. So this line is a pick 'em, even though Buffalo's at home. Market basically sees Baltimore is slightly better and early in the season, no real home field advantage to the same extent in Buffalo. And so you're getting a line that's very much a pick 'em or close to it. And so Baltimore is being picked about 30% of the time, right? So it's heavily on Buffalo, 2-1 at least. And so if you're in a weekly contest, again, it's one you got to think about. In a season long, I think it's okay to go with whichever side you favor of that matchup, because one coin toss game isn't going to decide your season on like pick popularity, and so there's a lot more games to come. So
Yeah, and that's how I approach NFL pools. That's how I approach daily fantasy contests and everything. If it's a coin flip, if I'm undecided between 2 sides, I always go with the lower owned option. I always go with the less popular option because I can gain leverage that way. That's sort of the name of the game when it comes to these game winner pools. And I'll throw out another one on top of that. We have the Houston Texans at the LA Rams. We're currently giving the Texans 43% win odds, but the public is picking them only 24% of the time. So it's something you have to consider. This isn't a true coin flip, right?
right.
But if you're in a large pool where you're looking to get one up on the rest of the field, if you're in a weekly pool where you want to take a team that others aren't, and you're trying to get leverage that way, I think the Texans are in play, even though they're on the road and they are a 3-point underdog, just because they're so unpopular.
Yeah, they're one of many. I think we'll get to all these. There's a lot of basically picks like that. Teams that are slight dogs, public's breaking heavily toward the favorite in week one, as can tend to happen. And in weekly pools, you have reasonable chances of these upsets. These are not big mismatches by any means. There's a lot of uncertainty about Matt Stafford. I think we'll talk about him when we get into the Rams, but he's playing. That's been the word. He did not practice much. The back injury bothered him throughout, and he didn't really report and even start practicing till late in the preseason. So this is one that's definitely one to circle and consider based on how the public's breaking. Again, Rams look good in the playoff, right? They took the Eagles, the Super Bowl champs, eventually to the wire in the snow in that game in the divisional round, and so maybe some of that stuff is still lingering in people's minds.
Yeah, so let's go ahead and go through these matchups and get through all of them. Let's start with the Thursday night game. The reigning champions Philadelphia Eagles are at home hosting the Dallas Cowboys without Micah Parsons, as you mentioned earlier. Philadelphia is a 9-point favorite, 47 and a half total on that one. Jason, I have an inkling of where you're going to be going for a game winner pick
You
on
think
this
so?
one. I don't think we have to spend too much time on that, but can you break down just this matchup in general and then maybe against the spread, which way you're looking?
Yeah, I mean, don't overthink it, especially early in a pool. If an upset happens, very few people will have picked it, so it's probably not going to be the outcome that decides a weekly contest as much. Either way, and you want to take the likely points with the favorite. We've also seen line movement, so I think if we talk spread, what number are you getting? This line was at 6.5 to 7, a couple weeks ago. So depending on when your contest set, it's week one line, you may be getting a vastly different number. We're seeing this up to 9 in some places as the highest favorite of the week. We're seeing plenty of fluctuation, little insider kind of betting talk here. This line's fluctuating between 7.5 and 9. I think some of that has to do with the teaser markets. So a lot of sports books will move the main line, right? They don't want to be at 7.5 and catching a lot of, Eagles teasers at 1.5. So they might move it to 9 to put it on 3. So that's a little bit of it, why we may be seeing this line movement. So I'm not sure how meaningful it is that it's whether you see 7.5 or 9, as long as your contest line's under it. But I think you want to grab the Eagles if you're getting under a touchdown. If you're getting a touchdown or less, you want to grab the Eagles. Above that, maybe you want to dabble because the Eagles are going to be popular in taking the points.
Yeah, so speaking to that, I have BetMGM splits pulled up right here. It says 88% of the money is on Eagles -8. That's the line that they had at the time of publishing that data. And of course, we see it at -9 right now. I would take the Cowboys personally in a spread pool like that if I'm getting 8 or 9 points, just because it's going to be so unpopular. And I don't think it's a bad bet either.
I agree with you. I think that we have seen sometimes the Super Bowl champs in the opener do well. Um, Certainly, but they're going to be big favorites when they're playing that game, when they play the opener. Um, Kind of what you said, and there's also a lot of variance, right? And so with these big spread games, where we now have a new coach, and I think everybody's Schottenheimer doesn't have a lot of defenders out there that believe in him. Dak's coming back from injury, so the Cowboys are going to look very different than how they looked at the end of last year. And yes, they have been without Micah Parsons, and that defense probably isn't going to be good. But this offense could actually probably light something up. And the Eagles were so good on defense last year that any regression back there is the kind of thing that could bring this in play as like a shootout, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on, let's go to the Friday night game played in Brazil. We have the Kansas City Chiefs against the LA Chargers. The Chiefs are favored by 3 points. What are your leans for that when it comes to game winner and against the spread?
Yeah, I think you're looking at probably the Chiefs. Well, you're looking at the Chiefs in game winner full season, probably still in weeklies. Though you could certainly pick the Chargers. I don't think it's a bad pick. I just think there's so many plus 2.5s on the board as upsets that you could play instead, that you may just want to stick with a favorite here early in the week. And then in spread pools, the same thing. What number are you getting? This number's at 3. I think this is one you play on the key numbers, because we've seen this Chiefs team keep teams in games, win games by a field goal. So if you're getting like 3.5 on the Chargers because your contest set it that way, I'm taking the Chargers, right? If I'm getting like 2.5, I'm probably taking the Chiefs. I'm looking at the key number in this one.
Absolutely. And I actually took the Chargers plus 3.5 earlier this week because I was getting that key number. Of course, that moved down to 3 now. So it really depends on where it lands. I think in a pool, it's tough when it lands on 3 like that with a team like the Chiefs. It really is a toss up, but I love getting that 3.5. Especially, we all know Kansas City's reputation in those 1-score games. Let's just say, with that being my bet, I wouldn't be upset at the fact that a Harrison Butker 50-yard field goal to win it after the Chargers fumbled and gave the game away. That would be fine for my wallet.
Have you read the script? Do you know the Chargers history? Is that what we're doing here?
Is it out on Twitter yet? I know someone's going to post
has
it
anybody
on
released the
Twitter or
script?
TikTok saying I'm a time traveler from the future and I found the script. So
yeah, I'll be interested in this game. Disclosure, I'm a Chiefs fan. The Chiefs offense hasn't been great the last 2 years. Had so many issues. The tackle situation was terrible. It was quite frankly amazing that team went to the Super Bowl with the offense the way it was. They drafted a tackle. Early reports look good out of preseason. If they solidify that and maybe some of the receiver depth, because we know Rice is going to be suspended, so they're not going to be at full strength right away. But he was gone most of last year when they had those issues. So, if Kelsey's relatively fresher starting the year, all that stuff, this Chiefs offense has room to be better, I think. And I'll be interested to see, is it the same old that we've seen the last 20 years or 20 games where Mahomes looks like a game manager? Or will he actually light it up? Will he hit some bombs to worthy? Will he get the time to do that? The things that he hasn't had recently.
Yeah, those are some great points. Moving on to Sunday, let's look at the 1:00 Eastern games, starting with Miami and Indianapolis. Currently, we're recording this Wednesday morning. It is a pick'em. Indianapolis hosting the Dolphins, 46-point over under. I don't have a great read on this game, and I think if anyone tells you they do, they're probably lying, because I don't know what to expect from either of these teams. Like, do you have a read on this one?
No, this is what I would call a high variance game on both sides, and it's a pool picker's kind of dream or nightmare, because this is the game at 1 p.m. Eastern, noon Central, that is your typical game in that time slot. Two teams that I think are average to below average, but not completely terrible, because they do have some really good players in other spots on the roster. But how are they going to go? There's so many question marks on both these teams. Colts making the switch to Daniel Jones. Quite frankly, Richardson's been bad, but Jones has been really bad the last 2 years. He had the one really good year, the first year there with the coach with the Giants, Dable. And since then, it's been pretty bad, because they were bad when he was healthy both years before he got hurt. Just not typically a productive, takes lots of sacks. My love for Jonathan Taylor. I think the Colts have great skill position players. If he can just be a game manager, this offense can, I think, be decent.
That's the biggest problem. That's the
Yeah,
biggest problem with Daniel Jones, is I don't believe he can be a game manager.
right.
He's
And,
so turnover prone.
and then you have the Dolphins. Questions about where this roster's trending. Devon Chain's supposed to play, but was limited with the calf injury. Will that flare up? Because these things we saw with McCaffrey last year. Oh, he's going to play, and then he barely played all year, and he struggled with it. So there's lots of uncertainty there, because while we may say that running backs aren't as valuable to the spread, I think Chain is one of those big play threats that can move kind of the impact on the game. Not just as a runner, but just as an all-around playmaker. Tyreek Hill, just like hit the whole vibe out of Tyreek Hill. Like, not selected as a captain, not surprising. He's made comments that basically like seems like he wants out of town. And where's that relationship? It seems to be like glossing over right now, but what will stuff boil over? This Miami team feels like a team that could go drastically either direction.
Yeah, remember Tyreek Hill last year when he said, "Hey, I'm gonna have over 2,000 yards receiving this year." He didn't say it this preseason. He
Yeah.
didn't make any proclamations like this in the preseason. In fact, all the news reports coming out of there were heading in the opposite direction.
Yeah.
We're very, I would say, negative or neutral at best coming out of the Tyreek Hill camp. So I don't want to touch this game if I'm just betting it on my own. I really don't have a read, like I said, on either side. However, if I have to pick this game, if I'm in a pool, game winner pool, spread pool, where it makes you make a selection on this game, I think that's where our pool genius data really comes in because I have it pulled up right here. It's saying the Colts are only being picked at 26%.
Yeah, Miami's a popular side in this one.
So
And so
like I said at the beginning, if it's a coin flip, which is that exactly what this game is, it's a pick 'em. I'm always going to go with the unpopular side. So I would take the Colts based on that data and try and get leverage that way.
and this is one where any slight spread moves don't really matter. We've seen this line move from Colts slightly favored to now a pick 'em, but even if the Dolphins were -1, how much line value you're going through zero? How much line value you really getting, whether you're getting +1 or -1 your contest line? Not much. So I think you probably play against the popularity in weekly pools and just roll it as like, well, if the Colts win, I shoot up in the standings because most of the people pick the Dolphins in this completely messed up game you don't want to touch.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm really curious to hear your take on this one. The next game we have up
Yeah.
Sunday, 1 o'clock, Pittsburgh at the New York Jets.
Oh boy.
Currently at Wednesday morning, we are looking at a spread of -2.5 for Pittsburgh. Total is one of the lowest on the board. In fact, I believe this is the lowest. Yep, it's the only one in the 30s. 38.5 should be no surprise. It's a Pittsburgh game against
Mhm.
not a great offense in the Jets. So where do you see this one from a game winner and against the spread?
Yeah, I mean, there's some things that are comforting in life, right? You know, maybe it's chicken noodle soup, maybe it's certain thing, and maybe it's Pittsburgh and the Jets getting together and the total being 30.5. Like you could have told me that 10 years ago,
Yep.
and we could have fast forward to now and be like, oh, shoo. Despite all the changes in the world, some things stay comfortable. Um, but there are lots of changes in this game, and so I do think that creates risk on the favorite. Like, you got Aaron Rodgers played for the Jets, now in Pittsburgh. You got Justin Fields played for the Steelers, now with New York. So you got two new quarterbacks who played for the opposite franchises, and you have a new coach in New York from what was a pretty, frankly, screwed up situation last year. I don't think they should have fired Saleh when they did, and it didn't work out for them. And the issues with the Jets stem all the way up to the owner. But regardless, lots of question marks in this game. We also saw an injury that just came out to the offensive line for the Jets. I suspect that may move a line, a half point, possibly by kickoff, but we'll see. So if you're getting that key number, I guess if your contest line's below a field goal and you can take the Steelers to a field goal, you might want to do it. But an upset here would not surprise me.
Yeah, this is another one. I'm looking at our popularity data. Looks like the Jets in game winner pools being picked at 22%. I'm not really surprised by that.
Yeah.
But spread is under a field goal. If you're in a medium sized pool, 50 to 70 people, are you looking to sneak the Jets in there because they are the less popular side? Do you have enough faith in them, or are you going to take your shot somewhere else?
Yeah, that's a tough question because, when we have so many teams that are like a dog of under a field goal and unpopular, you know, do you want to pick them all or do you want to take your shots? So
Right.
I think that's the decision you have to make. Like, you definitely want to have some of them, but you don't want to have I don't think you want to have so many if it's a smaller pool that you know, oh, I hit a couple, but I went 2 and 4 or something and 3 and 5. and I still lost ground to the field. So maybe I want to pick my shots. If you think it's one of the five that you prefer, then I would do it. But we're going to talk about some others.
Right. And moving on to those others, we have another 1 o'clock game, the New York Giants at the Washington Commanders. Spread right now, we had a little bit of movement, but it's at the Commanders, favored by 6 points, total of 45.5. I have a pick in this game, Jason, and I think you might know where I'm going with it, but I want to hear your side.
Yeah, probably. I mean, our models like the Giants. I think there's been steam in the sharp market on the Giants. I like the Giants against the spread. I probably wouldn't pick them in game winner. The spread's so large. I don't think you need to do that at this point in the season. Um, but I definitely of the sides, I like Giants catching points with that D line, with just kind of the uncertainty of week one. In a rivalry where home field doesn't really matter, like these teams are separated by 100 miles, similar climate, they play each other all the time. I don't think the Giants really care about going into Washington, and so I'm not sure that matters. So I think that all those are factors for me and why I like the points, because road teams in these divisional matchups where they're close to each other and they're kind of like used to playing in the same environment tend to cover at above average rate.
Yeah, and I did lock in a bet on the Giants +6. So that is the way I'm going here. I feel good about that, even though we're not getting the full 7. It was 7, like I think about a month ago. And then that line has ticked down a little bit. Basically everything you said. Divisional game, I think it's going to be close. I think the Giants are going to be a little bit better this season.
Yeah.
Whether that translates to, I mean, that's not saying much because they were a little bit of a train wreck towards the end of the year last year. But I think they're going to be very competitive this year, especially early in the season. And I think the Commanders might take a step back. I don't know how far of a step that is, but this team, like a lot of people just look and say, oh, Jaden Daniels was amazing last season. They scored a lot of points. This is a great team. They were terrible against the run last year. They ranked bottom 5 in yards per carry allowed. They have some issues like you wrote an article in the offseason that their offensive age outside of Daniels is very old, and that's concerning for teams and their win totals moving forward. So it's kind of one of those spots where I think we have an underrated team against a potentially overrated team, and I'm more than happy to catch the points here.
Yeah, I'm kind of kicking myself. The Giants, just real quickly talk about the Giants and the overall season. In some of our models in the preseason and some of the similar team stuff I did, the Giants popped. Now they play a really tough schedule, and so we ran it against the market odds over the summer. We like to respect the market and move our rating toward the market some, not all. And so we did move the Giants where we would have otherwise had them down a little bit. And now the spread is moving toward where we had it originally when we were like trying to like respect the market. Well, the market's come toward what would have been our position. Maybe we should have held. Because this Giants seems, I think, power rated a little higher if you go by where the spreads moved than where people had them in like May or June.
Right. So let me throw another divisional game at you with a spread of more than a field goal. We have Cincinnati Bengals at the Cleveland Browns. Cincinnati on the road, favored by 5 points right now as it stands, total of 47.5. I mean, I think it's the Bengals in a game winner pick. I don't think you really need to overthink this and try and get too contrarian and take the Browns. I mean, despite all the, Zach Taylor 1-9 in the first 2 weeks of the season, we hear a lot of that, but I don't know. I don't think that really applies too much to week 1 here at the Browns, who are, I guess you could say they're a rebuilding team or they're on their way to rebuilding. I obviously Zach Taylor's very aware that they start slow and he's trying to rectify that. That is definitely front of mind for them. So I would say the Bengals here. And I think you would agree with that. Tell me if you don't for a game winner pick, but where are you looking against the spread? Would you take them against the spread favored by 5 too?
So that's the thing is our models actually are lower on the Bengals than the market odds. And I'm trying to decide how I feel about that because I think there are arguments both ways. Cincinnati's defense is a concern. So anytime a team that is laying points above like a field goal, it has a suspect defense. I mean, they're always at risk of either losing the game because their defense can't get a stop, or just giving up backdoor covers late in the game because they don't throttle teams when they have the lead and the pass rush is going and all that. So the pass defense maybe isn't good enough to hold teams once they have the lead. And so those things are concerns. On the Bengals start side, I actually think they will start better in offense. I think they have worked on that. I think they cost themselves in the past. Does that mean they'll win? The defense, I think, could let them down. I think if they lose, it's because this game goes over. So that would be kind of my thought. We have seen line movement downward on this one as well. So division game on the road against a rival. The Browns are probably better in week 1 than they might be in week 14. And I say that because if they fall out of contention, I actually think Flacco's a serviceable starter in the short term and was good in Cleveland 2 years ago when they decided that they had to protect Deshaun Watson's feelings and get rid of him after he was so good in place of Watson, and they brought him back now. So I think Flacco's a competent kind of like underdog quarterback this late in his career. Whereas I think if they threw the rookies to the Wolves, I would like the Bengals a lot better. And later in the year, that would be the case. So that's kind of my thought is I probably think it's the Browns slightly with the points because of the defense for the Bengals.
Yeah, and so that's our models like the Browns. I'm just looking at that. Browns +5, I should say. And then I'm also looking at BetMGM data. They say 66% is on the Bengals, -5.5 was the line that they had it there. So it looks like the public would be on the Bengals for that one. That wouldn't be much of a surprise for me. So I think maybe trying to leverage that if you have to pick against the spread could be the move there. So next matchup we have here, another divisional matchup, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at Atlanta. Tampa Bay is favored by 2.5 with the total at 47. How do you see this one?
Yeah, I actually have a strong lean in this one.
I think I know what it is.
I actually like catching Atlanta as a home dog here in this matchup for a lot of reasons. One, I think Atlanta could be underrated. I think we've seen teams like this with a second-year quarterback, with kind of the offensive talent, with the offensive age of their skill players, kind of make that leap, especially in a coach's year 2 when that coach was, I would say, okay in year 1. And they were okay. They almost made the playoffs last year. They made the quarterback switch. They struggled with Cousins once he had the injury last year. And they brought, Penix in at the end of the year after drafting the first round. They did lose that Week 18 game, but I think he's had an offseason to now be the man. And so I like Atlanta for those reasons. I also think Tampa, 2 really good wide receivers, but lots of depth concerns on offense, I think. And so I think the Tampa offense will still be good, but it may not be at full 100% strength compared to what we'll see later in the year. And so I like Atlanta catching points here as an outright underdog pick against the spread and potentially in weekly game winners.
Yeah, so I think this is another classic case. We talked about this Giants and Commanders. I think this is a classic case of Atlanta surging up, trending up. They might be a little bit underrated in this spot. Tampa Bay might be a little bit overrated, in my opinion, based on their results last year. I don't know how sustainable that is. Their offense was great. Baker Mayfield was amazing last year. Their
Period.
defense left a lot to be desired. I think a lot of it was their division. They got a lot of those wins against a not so great division. The Falcons fell off after the whole Kirk Cousins debacle and kind of threw Penix in there. Now he has a little more time to learn the system. He already got his feet wet. He could hit the ground running here. I do like Atlanta. I agree with you there. Tampa Bay also has injury concerns on offense, and Tristan Wirfs up front. That's a big injury for their offensive line. So I like Atlanta. I would bet the Atlanta money line in this one. I would highly consider taking them. In fact, I would take them in a game winner pool. I would take Atlanta and use that as one of my leverage picks. It looks like the public, no surprise here, is leaning towards Tampa Bay, both game winner and against the spread. BetMGM has 61% on the Buccaneers -2.5. So I agree with you. I like the Falcons as a leverage pick here. So next one, let's go the Raiders at the Patriots. This is another 1 o'clock game on Sunday. Patriots at home, favored by 2.5. Total is 44. This is a weird game. A lot of unknowns. We talked about
Mhm.
unknowns in previous matchups, but I think this one might take the cake because we have some new head coaches going here and a lot of new faces, unfamiliar schemes all around on both sides. So, how do you see this one, Jason?
Yeah, this is one of those with so many new things that it's quite uncertain. The public is so. What's interesting is the betting market, I think, is fairly high on New England. They
Yep.
also play a very soft schedule,
Yep.
one of the softer ones in the NFL. So if they're even average, they could be a playoff contender just on schedule. And this is one of those games that they could win and could decide whether they are in the playoff mix for a wild card spot. I don't think they're challenging the Bills, but they could be in that mix in a 17 playoff thing late in the year. So could the Raiders, although they play in a tougher division, I think, top to bottom, and are going to face tougher tests later on. So the public doesn't seem, though, unlike the betting market and some of the betting sharps who have pushed that Patriots to almost like, where the expectation is they go about 500. I don't think the public's on board with that yet. And so New England's still being picked more than the Raiders are in this game by the public, but relative to other teams with similar spreads, the Patriots are a little more unpopular. So I'm probably sticking with them for that reason. Like as a relative edge, that more people are picking the Raiders as their upset than some of these other games that I'm going to pick. And so I'm probably going to go opposite them on the favorite here for that reason. More like an overall game strategy than particular confidence about this matchup.
Yeah, and I feel like I'm agreeing with you on all these, but that's where I land too. I think I would stick with the Patriots. I it's not that I think the Raiders are going to be bad. I think the Raiders have a lot of things going for them. But playing on the road week one, I just think the Patriots are the better play here. I would not touch this game if I like unless I had to pick it in a pool or something. I would not go out on my own to a sports book and lay down my cold, hard earned cash on either of these sides. But I think in a pool, game winner or spread pool, I'm just going to lean with the Patriots, and that's where our models actually lean to. It's not a strong conviction with that, but our models do lean Patriots minus 2.5. So looking at the next game, another 1 o'clock game, we have the Carolina Panthers at the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this line actually moved a little bit. It moved
Mm-hmm.
from -3 to -3.5, which is across that key number. So I don't know if that changes how you look at this from a spread perspective, but give me the breakdown here. Are you sticking with the Jaguars to win this game? And do you have any conviction on them to cover now a 3.5 point spread?
Yeah, so the Jaguars, as you may know, we put out a futures article as well. The Jags are just one of those teams that profile to me as a potential like bounce back slash breakout type team, even more than Carolina. I actually think both of these teams are decent plays against their season win total. I think they both will ultimately be better than the public generally thinks of them right now. To me, it's a bit unfortunate they catch each other. I would rather the Jags catching someone the public was super high on. Um, but I have the Jags as a potential surprise team. That doesn't mean it's going to work out. Trevor Lawrence may still struggle with a new head coach, but we see a lot of times with these new young head coaches that get a quarterback, particularly one like Lawrence who's coming back from injury. Those teams can surprise, and the Jags have the potential for a great offense if Lawrence is just average. Brian Thomas broke out last year. They drafted, the rookie this year, Travis Hunter out of Colorado. Plays both ways, but I think probably going to play more on offense. Um, they have three young running backs that I think all could be good to serviceable in an offense and have different skill sets. Young tight end and Brenton Strange moving in as a starter now that Evan Ingram's gone. I think there's a lot of like potential breakouts here and a new coach who was very successful. We didn't mention him in the Bucs segment, but he was the offensive coordinator that basically had Baker Mayfield have his career year. And so if Liam Cohen is a success in Jacksonville, we're going to see it right away, I think. And so that's in play. I have a little more concerns about Bryce Young. I think he was better by the end of the year, but I'm still not sure he's a long-term starter who's going to be an above average to average quarterback in this league. And they've had some injuries to the receiver depth. Coker went on the IR after they traded Thielen, things like that. And
Yeah,
so
and
all that's
so
in play. I like the Jags. If you're catching 3.5, maybe I take the half point line value back, but I do tend to like the Jags, and a lot of contests probably set their lines before that movement.
yeah, I agree with that. And I won't ask you to do your best Liam Cohen Duval impression. Maybe at least not this week. Maybe that'll be a
Yeah,
punishment if
yeah.
we do a head
If
to
all
head.
these picks go bad, yeah.
So moving on to the next game, we have Arizona at New Orleans. Arizona favored by 6.5. 43.5 is the total. I think Arizona's the play. I mean, even though this spread's almost a
Yeah.
touchdown, I think Arizona's absolutely the play in the game winner pool. Don't think you really need to get too cute about it.
Oh,
What
yeah.
do you think, Jason? Am I wrong about Arizona minus 6.5?
100% in a game winner pool. I don't think you even think about it. Like, don't even, there's no need. You have so many short dogs that can be in play that there's no need to even think about this one in game winner. And spread, I think I'm still leaning Arizona. I'd probably honestly play alt lines at both things because we've seen bad teams like the Saints come out for 1 week and maybe even pull an upset or keep it close. But we've also seen teams like this where, let's be honest, Spencer Rattler, I don't think is the answer for the future. This team's probably playing, and their next year quarterback may not even be on this roster. And we've seen teams like that are just rolling out I wouldn't even call them a journeyman because they haven't proven themselves in this league, get mollywopped in week 1 and they're changing quarterbacks by week 2 or 3. And that's in play. Like, that's in play. Even if I don't think Arizona's a great team, if this New Orleans team is a disaster, that's in play.
Yeah, for sure. And there you have it. Your word of the day is mollywopped.
Yep.
So I'm gonna look that one up after. I haven't heard that one, I think so, ever. So I'm gonna look that one up after we're off of recording this. But yeah, I'm taking the Cardinals here, and it's at 6.5. I don't know if I care that they're gonna be popular. I think I'm gonna take them anyway. BetMGM has them 87% on the Cardinals. You can look at our numbers as we move closer to Sunday to see if that changes at all. I think I'm just going to eat the chalk and take the Cardinals anyway, but definitely look at our data to see where those numbers are, and then obviously what spread you're getting if the line moves at all too. So next game, we're now in the 4:05 Eastern window on Sunday. We have 49ers at the Seattle Seahawks. 49ers on the road are favored by 2.5. Are you taking the 49ers in this one?
Whew, I think this is one. I'm taking the 49ers in game winner in season long for sure. This is one where I'm tempted by the dog, though, in weekly contests. I'm definitely it's one that's in my consideration. Is I'm like,
Yep.
which underdogs do I play? This Seattle team I think is live. They were pretty, I think, solid in last year in the first year for Mike McDonald. Sam Darnold's now in off of Geno Smith now to the Raiders. So I think this Seattle team's live. San Francisco, they are to me the favorite, but this is a dangerous spot right away. There's some question marks, like Juwan Jennings has been, quote, injured or holding out, whatever you think, and not practicing fully. There's question marks on the skill. Like Ricky Pearsall, people are expecting a breakout in year 2. Will it happen? What will this offense look like? We've seen George Kittle be a big play guy, but if the other guys don't step up, Kittle can draw more attention. So I think the Seattle defense is good. I think this is a dangerous game for San Francisco right off the bat.
Yeah, and a lot of those things that you touched on, I do want to point out that it does look like the 49ers minus 2.5 is going to be the popular choice. We have them at 76% picked right now. So if you want to be contrarian, if you're in a larger pool or you want to, go against the grain for potentially a weekly prize, as you mentioned, even in game winner pools, I think that spread is low enough. You can entertain Seattle at home. I know we're not doing totals on this show, but I do want to throw it out. I do like the total under 43.5 for those reasons you mentioned. San Francisco has a lot of question marks at their skill positions. Seattle's breaking in a new quarterback. I think this one could go under. I haven't bet it yet, but I think 43.5 is on my short list to go under. So I might be placing that bet before Sunday. Moving on, next game in the 405 window, Tennessee Titans at Denver Broncos. That spread has ticked up to 9. I believe it was at 7 before, ticked up to 8. Now it's at 9. Total is at 42. We know it's Denver for the game winner picks. We know Denver should be towards the top, if not at the top in your confidence pools. What about the spread, Jason?
I think just the week one factor and big spreads that are over a touchdown. I think you have to at least consider Tennessee if that number gets pushed up in your pool. If I'm catching 9, I'm probably taking Tennessee. Right. I probably want them even anywhere above a touchdown, just to for the contrarian play as well. Um, Obviously, Denver's defense. People are saying, Cam Ward going against Denver's defense, it's a tough defense,
Yes.
one of the best in the league. So all those things are in play. I think this Tennessee team has the potential to be better. My concern is the coaching. Last year things were they shouldn't have gone as bad as they did in Callahan's first year. And what are we going to see in year 2? Because I think they have some players that can play, and will we see them regress positively from what happened a year ago? Because this is not your typical first overall pick team. They weren't the worst team in the league last year, in my opinion. So,
Yeah.
but I would probably take the points. I definitely would take Denver in game winner pools, all types.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point. Game winner pools, don't get cute with it. The popularity, I do want to point that out as of Wednesday. We have Denver about 65% picked against the spread in spread pools. I think that's going to be about right. I think it could get even higher than that. BetMGM is showing 95% of the money on the Broncos -8, which is ridiculous, by the way. Like, I think this is a decent spot to go a little contrarian, catching more than a touchdown here and just, hoping Cam Ward can do something, hoping it's a low scoring game and maybe you get a backdoor touchdown or it's just like I don't know, 24-17. That's it. The Broncos looked really good and they took care of business, but the Titans kind of hung around. I mean, that's just the way I'm leaning. I don't know if I would go out and bet this on my own, but if I had to make a pick in pools, I think it would be Titans against the spread.
Yeah, honestly, I would expect Denver probably thinking Titans aren't going to go put a ton of points up on them to be somewhat conservative on offense
True. Yeah.
and be low pass volume, working their all their backs, Dobbins, Harvey. Um, so the question is, can the Tennessee avoid giving up the big play over the top? And then can Cam Ward not do a Will Levis impersonation and throw the ball off his knees to the Denver defense? Those are things that will result in the non-cover if you have the Titans.
I we're in the business of making predictions on this show. I'm gonna go ahead and predict that Cam Ward is not gonna have the generational run that Will Levis did
Yeah.
of the sheer number of memes to
Yep.
start the first 2 months of the season. It seemed like every week it was just him in this meme that went viral on the internet. So I will probably miss those, but I don't know if I'm going to miss watching Will Levis play because man, he had some brutal spots last year. Moving on to the next game, 425. We already talked about this one. Detroit at Green Bay. Green Bay is favored by 2.5 as we have the line right now, total at 47. Green Bay, as we mentioned, unpopular, catching some value in those game winner pools. I would imagine that's also the case in spread pools because they are favored by 2.5 points. Public perceives Detroit much higher than what the betting market perceives them. So are you going Green Bay across the board if you're in a pick 'em pool or spread pool?
Yeah, I'm staying Green Bay. I think in any pool contest. Now, do I want to go against Detroit in just on in a bet? I don't know. But I definitely am playing against the public here with how unpopular the Packers are.
Yeah, yeah, and I agree with that. I don't think I'm going out of my way to place a wager on this at a sports book and say I want Green Bay, but I think from a sheer leverage perspective, in a pool where I'm forced to make a pick on this game, I think the Packers are the right side for those reasons. Another game we talked about, another 425 game on Sunday. Houston Texans at LA Rams. The Rams are favored by 3. I think this is a spot where you could take the Texans in a game winner pool.
Yep.
I really like them getting +3 for all the reasons we outlined earlier. If you are making the pick against the spread, I don't know if I have the conviction to go out and play that on my own, but speaking strictly from a spread pool, I think that's the way I'm leaning.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's we talked about this one, but yeah, I think Stafford's. Um, quite frankly, I'm. How good are the Rams? I think they can be good, but they actually had a negative point differential last year, and I know Houston underachieved last year on offense. If that bounces back a little bit, that Houston defense is really tough, and if Stafford's immobile and that line can put pressure on them, they're very much in play to win this game.
Yeah, and as we referenced earlier, in game winner pools, we have 24% picking the Texans right now, even though that is a low spread, and the Texans are very live to win that game. So that's a potential leverage point. Depends how contrarian you want to get in your pool, what your pool size is. If you're competing for a weekly prize, I think this is a good spot to go against the grain and try and get some leverage. So next game, we're at the Sunday night game. We talked about this a little bit. Ravens at the Buffalo Bills. It's a pick 'em. The crowd loves Buffalo in this one. That kind of makes, I mean, you know where we're going with that. We
Yeah.
we do like the Ravens just because of that factor. We think you can get some leverage in what is considered by the betting markets a coin flip game. Um, is that how you see this one? Are you taking Baltimore in a game winner pool and a spread pool, given that's pick 'em?
Yeah, I'm probably taking them in both, even a season long, probably given. And look, I think Buffalo's good. Both these teams are good. These along with Kansas City are going to be your AFC contenders. I would be surprised, even if one faltered, that one of these three didn't represent the AFC this year. Baltimore's just so much more unpopular that I think this is one you just got to be like, I'm not taking any more risk. I'm getting the team, and then you hope that somebody doesn't step on the line with their toe, because we saw that with Baltimore last year in the opener against Kansas City. I think it's going to be a game that comes down to the end, honestly.
Yeah.
Um,
It'll be
yeah,
interesting to see if Baltimore comes out with white cleats this time,
yeah.
because that was brought into the conversation last year against the Chiefs. If he wore white cleats, maybe he gets away with that on the white chalk line.
Absolutely.
So moving on, we have the next game and our final game of the week, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's a weird one. It's the Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. A lot of different changes going on for different reasons. Minnesota breaking in a new quarterback, JJ McCarthy. Chicago, as we mentioned, getting new head coach Ben Johnson, one of the greatest offensive minds in football right now. Got him from the Lions. How are they going to look? Are they going to be ready to go? Minnesota's favored on the road by 2 points. Uh, I don't know if that's justified because I really don't know what to expect of these teams. I don't want to go out on my own and bet this, but if you have to make a pick in the game winner pool or spread pool, which way are you leaning?
Well, this is an important strategy one as we close, right? If you're in a season long contest, you probably want to set your pick and not worry about it. If you're in a weekly contest, some of them allow you to change your picks up until kickoff, right? So that may depend on where you are. If you're still live to win the weekly prize or split it, what you want to do. If I'm in a big group of people and I know if I hit the winner, I move past those people. I move past those people into a prize position. Um, I'm probably leaning Chicago because Minnesota is super popular. Again, a team that had a gaudy record last year, was in the playoffs, but has a lot of changes. I actually think Minnesota is undervalued in some of the market stuff, but I also think there's also the potential for high variance Chicago outcomes. Like, what if this Chicago team suddenly, because they don't have the coach they had last year and Ben Johnson's been whipping them into shape? I mean, there's two ways it's good. I think Johnson's team could struggle early as he enforces his changes, but they could also just be really good right away compared to what we saw because they were so bad in game situations. My gosh, I don't think there was a more frustrating game team to watch at the end of games last year. And so, um, very much in play to pick Chicago because the public is so heavy on Minnesota. In a game in a weekly winner, I'm doing that if I'm trailing, if I'm in a tied with a large group. Now, if I've got the lead on one person or two people, I'm probably picking Minnesota to block them because I'm thinking they're probably in that way, and I'm going to force them to prove me wrong. And so that's kind of like a strategy point: is if you can change your pick, think about how many people you got to block and how many people you're competing with. The more I'm competing with, the more I'm likely to go with Chicago.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point. That's exactly the way to play it. Pick popularity right now, only 24% on the Bears in game winner pools, even though it's close to a pick 'em. Bears are 2-point dogs at home. I mean, don't get much closer than that to a pick 'em. So yeah, I think playing it just exactly how you laid out is the right way to go. So that is the slate for week one. We'll see how these games play out. I'm sure we'll have a lot of different takes next week when we do this episode. There will probably be a couple regrets in there. I mean, there will probably be a couple
There always are.
victory laps in there. We'll see how it goes, but like we mentioned several times in this episode, if you want to see all this data that we're referencing, you want to see how to play your specific pool, whether it's against the spread, confidence pools, or game winner pools, you can actually set that up in our football pick'em tool over on Pool Genius. We have a free trial going right now, so just go in there, click the free trial button front and center on the Pool Genius homepage. And Jason's also doing strategy articles. He outlined the football pick'em article earlier this week, laying out all those value plays that we went through. And he's going to be updating that closer we get to Sunday with any changes in line movement or public popularity. So, Jason, any final words you want to add as we head into week one?
No, I'm looking forward to it. The witching hour of week one in the afternoon, early games is always like one of those moments that we look forward to, right? When you got games coming down to the fourth quarter in that first set of games, and a bunch of them are going on. And so, looking forward to that. Looking forward to week two overreaction week. That's honestly one of my favorite weeks. Is the week after something happens, particularly if a team has a bunch of turnovers or a game goes against them on some really fluky stuff. Great opportunity, and we'll be talking about that next week.
Yeah, certainly. So good luck in your week one pools. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to this channel. We're going to be breaking this down all season long. And Jason actually put out another week one video with Stephen Andrus, a great video over there breaking down the NFL survivor options for this week. A lot of them we referenced several times in this video. So check that out if you haven't done so already. And good luck for week one.